honestly, chuck it in the bin. As a D tier movement, bit of a controversial one here, yes. So once again, back in our favorite location, being the anxiety corner of the gym. Back into another tier list video where we're going to talk about a few bits and bobs. So this one's actually going to be split into two parts. So today is going to be back training and how you can basically optimize your back training, telling you which movements to stop doing and which movements you should prioritize. But the thing with the back is there's quite a lot involved there. You have to consider things like the upper back muscles, rear delts, traps, rhomboids, etc. You also have to consider the lats. And because there is so much, we will split it into two parts, being part one today being the lats. Very nice, very nice. Part two being in a couple of weeks, more of the upper back muscles. That is the plan today. And all I'm going to say, no, I'm not covering every single lat movement in existence. I don't have the time for it, Taylor doesn't have the time for it, and you don't have the time to pretend you're going to watch it, so don't lie to me, you wouldn't. We're just going to do some of the big ones, some of the key ones, and if I haven't covered it, doesn't mean it's not a good or a bad movement, it's just, it didn't make the cut. So let's go. I'm here to annoy some more people, and there's going to be the odd person pop up in the comment section disagreeing with everything I'm about to say, but it's my video, my opinion, you don't have to align with it, that's fine. The deadlift is not good for lat development. So many times I see people on the line be like, oh, you want big lats, you know what you need to do? Deadlift. Let's rationalize that for a second. We know to effectively target or work a muscle, you have to probably take it through a relevant range of motion against resistance. Range of motion for the lats, we're thinking of things like one, very good range of motion, boom, very good range of motion. Of those two primary ranges of motion that we've just looked at, how many of them are involved in the deadlift? It's a trick question. 0. Therefore, why would the deadlift then be a good movement for developing your lats? It's not. Sure, the lats will probably experience some tension just from holding the weight and holding positioning, but that is not going to be sufficient enough tension to yield sufficient stimulus for growth, thus deeming it a good movement. Therefore, due to lack of sufficient stimulus for growth, due to lack of relevant range of motion, it's a bit of a pants lat movement. Is it good for other things? Sure, yeah, I mean, yeah, lower back development is okay, but if we're looking at the old lats here, the deadlift is well and truly a D tier movement. Conveniently, D for deadlift. Next movement, same place, similar tier. We figured, you know, convenience, we're with a barbell anyway, might as well stay with the barbell and shift from a deadlift to a barbell row. And quite frankly, it's pants for your lats too. Granted, it does take the lats through a more relevant range of motion, being obviously this movement here, which we like, because again, the lats, they do this, we like. Just because it does that now doesn't automatically mean it's a great movement. The reason why it's not a great movement is simply external weaknesses. When you're barbell rowing, you're probably going to be lifting, relatively, a heavy amount of weight. And in doing so, you have to consider what externals may limit your ability to take the target musculature, being the lats, to, if not close to failure. And in most cases when barbell rowing, that could be a couple of things actually. It could be your lower back fatiguing because you're adopting a bent over position without any support. Your lower back is going to be heavily utilized, and for me personally, my lower back does give out before my lats, and when an external weakness is giving out before a target musculature, we are limiting stimulus for growth. If my lower back has 0 reps in reserve, so it's hit failure, but my lats still have 6 or 7 in the tank, they're not being worked close enough to failure to yield a sufficient stimulus for growth. Therefore, not very good. A second thing not many people consider is in the adopting of an underhand grip, you're going to get more elbow flexion, more bendy of the elbow, and in adopting of the underhand grip here, you are going to shift a lot of emphasis over to the biceps. When your overhand grip, due to this rotation where you obviously have this pronated position, the biceps are going to be slightly yet less utilized versus an underhand grip being supinated. When you're rowing, you'll get a fair amount of elbow flexion, which we can adjust by moving your body slightly, I get. But when it is underhand, your biceps are going to be heavily utilized, and therefore, because your biceps are much smaller than your lats, which is pretty fair to say, probably going to find that your biceps are going to fatigue pretty quickly. We don't like that. So it's not just the fact that there's a lot of elbow flexion occurring here that's a potential issue, because you can mitigate that by altering your grip. It's the fact that you are underhand and supinated grip, thus shifting a lot of emphasis to the biceps when rowing, which in turn will present them as a potential limiting factor. It's not as bad as a deadlift. We're going to call the barbell row underhand grip specifically a C tier movement, the one-arm dumbbell row. Bit of a controversial one here. Don't know why it's controversial, but it feels like it might get some attention if I say that. One of the key factors here that separates this from something like a barbell row is the fact that you're using a resting side to support yourself, thus reducing the likelihood of a limiting factor from presenting, i.e. because I'm supporting myself with the resting side, my lower back is under less load and is less likely to give out first. In addition to that, you also note I'm adopting a neutral grip. Although the amount of elbow flexion is going to be comparable to a barbell row, the neutral grip will reduce how much the biceps are being utilized, thus reducing the likelihood of them presenting as a limiting factor, which we like. One thing I do quite like about the old dumbbell row is the fact that you can really think about driving your elbow to your hip. In doing so, you reduce elbow flexion, thus reducing bicep involvement, and really focus on what we're trying to get the lats to do here, which is this motion. Any movement in which your grip is relevant, RDL, lateral raises, bicep curls, rows, pull downs, whatever, use straps. I don't care how strong you think you are, eventually, your grip will become a limiting factor. You consider the muscles that contribute to grip strength compared to what you're trying to work here, massive difference. Your grip will give out. Do not hinder your ability to grow just because you don't want to strap up. I mentioned earlier about external weaknesses presenting themselves which limits stimulus for growth. The same thing will apply with grip. If you're going and your grip is failing before your lats are failing, your lats are not experiencing enough effective reps, thus promoting stimulus for growth, your grip is. You don't want that. We're trying to train our lats here, we're not trying to train our ego or our grip. Stop being a sausage. No one thinks you're weak because you use straps. If they do, then tell them to grow up and go home. I was toying with ideas here, but I'm actually going to say it's an A-tier movement. Although many may not agree with that, I really like this movement, I enjoy this movement, and I do program it for some clients because I think it's a bloody good movement. The dumbbell pullover, a movement many of the old school bodybuilders would swear by, and I believe Arnie said once, made him develop a wider rib cage. Not sure how that works. Big thing here. So many people associate this with a lat-based movement because of what you're doing. I guess if you step away and looking at the old biomechanics and things, your lats in this position kind of lose leverage around the 120-degree mark, so about there. So anything beyond that isn't really favoring the lats too heavily. Because of where gravity is pulling, once you get from here to about here, after this point, tension drops off anyway. So when the lats actually reach a point in which they might experience leverage if there's sufficient resistance, tension has dropped off due to the fact that you're going against gravity rather than a cable machine or something similar, which is going to come up soon. There's actually an argument that this motion from this point down is arguably going to actually recruit more of the lower pec fibers. Obviously you've got 3 fiber regions of the pec, well 2 depending on who you speak to, because some people pair them. You've got clavicular, sternal, costal, or sternal, costal, depending on what you say. Either way, doesn't matter. But when you get to that point, there's a bit of an argument online about how doing this dumbbell pullover is actually going to be more of a lower pec movement due to said resistance and leverage point. Do I think it's a lower pec movement or do I think it's a lat movement? Quite frankly, I think it's a bit pants for the lats. I don't do it personally. I think every time I tried to do it in my earlier days, it just put my shoulders in a very compromised position. I didn't like it. I don't think it's particularly easy to get into. If you're lifting heavy enough weight, I can't get that weight on me. It's just very impractical. And again, I don't think it's particularly great for developing the lats. I think there are much better alternatives that adopt a very similar plane of motion. Being a cable variant, which you'll see shortly, I'm going to put the dumbbell pullover as a D-tier movement. D for dead dumbbell. Yes. And the problem is we're at the gym at 5:30 in the evening on a Thursday. It's bloody busy, so all the pieces of equipment I need to use to show you things are all in use, and I'm feeling a bit peckish. Next on the agenda, our first vertical pulling motion of the day. We like that. I typically split things up into horizontal and vertical pulling. We've got 2 here, and I'm going to combine them into one because they're very similar, but they aren't ranked the same. We have both the pull-up, which is a wide grip overhand, and the chin-up, which is a narrow grip underhand. A couple of points there. We'll talk about the pull-up first. Pull-up, fantastic movement. Be that body weight, weighted, assisted, whatever it may be, bloody fantastic movement and bloody fantastic for the lats. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the big things we look at the lats is especially this kind of 90-degree mark down. As the elbow is getting closer to the body, you are going to shift a lot of emphasis over to the lats, and we like that. When doing a pull-up, the elbow is getting closer to the body. Very nice. This motion particularly does place a little bit more emphasis on the lower lat fibers. Very nice. And with that, I actually consider pull-ups arguably one of my favorite lat movements. The issue is with them is that not everyone can do them, and not everyone has access to an assistance machine, whatever it may be. The band is a bit tricky because you'll know with the pull-up, oftentimes the hardest point is going to be that final kind of third, let's say. As the lats are shortening as you're coming up, the movement does typically feel a bit harder. With bands, for example, they provide more tension at the bottom when you're stronger and less tension at the top when you're weaker, when you ideally want it the other way around, which is why machines are probably a bit better, being the pull-up assistance machine. I would actually rate, I think this is our first one thus far, the pull-up as an S-tier movement. S being one of my favorite movements, one of the best movements, and quite frankly, the saucy sauce of lat-dominant movements, in my opinion. Flip around, the chin-up. I mentioned earlier, I've mentioned a few times actually, the fact that when you adopt an underhand grip, you're going to shift a little bit more emphasis to the bicep, especially when there's quite a lot of elbow flexion occurring, as there would be in a chin-up. You are still working the lats pretty well because you're going through a range of motion that they align with, being this. The issue with that is, again, how much bicep is being recruited here, and probably more than you realize. This then presents the bicep as a potential limiting factor when considering the movement and its ability to train the lats effectively. In addition to that, we have another hindrance that people don't often think about, is the exaggerated or excessive supination. If I tell you to supinate your wrist, which is basically palm up, a lot of people can't actually supinate to the point in which they would need to be when holding a barbell, a pull-up bar, whatever it may be. So I can supinate this far. That's as far as I can comfortably go. Anything beyond that is really hard, but the bar is flat. So for me to do a chin-up, I have to put my body in a position it doesn't feel comfortable, and a position that, quite frankly, isn't very nice, being that excessive supination. The chin-up is actually very uncomfortable for me to do, and it's just not one of my favorites. Do I think it's okay? Yes, it is. Do I think it's awful? Absolutely not. I'm kind of torn here between B and C, but I'd probably rank it more towards a B tier movement, just because it does train the lats somewhat effectively. It's just limited by a few externals that are hard to mitigate, which is why it's probably not higher up in the list. I mentioned earlier the dumbbell pullover and how it was a bit crap due to the resistance profile, gravity, all that stuff. One of the ways of mitigating these issues is actually doing a rope pullover on the cable machine. Firstly, you can stop before the lats lose leverage at that 120-degree mark or so. And secondly, the resistance profile due to cable is going to be a little bit more consistent and a little bit better. So you have resistance the whole way through the movement rather than a very small portion, which is going to be pretty important when looking at sufficient stimulus for growth when considering hypertrophy. Big thing here, use a rope. The reason why I say that is when you adopt an overhand grip or like a bar or whatever, it encourages your elbows to flare out. The more your elbows flare away from the body, the less lat is being recruited. Your lats want to keep the elbow close to the body. Close to the body, close to the body. That's what they're trying to do. Neutral grip will allow you to keep said elbows closer to the body. This is neutral grip, elbow close to the body. This is overhand grip. My elbow is now flaring. So, neutral grip. Do I love it as a movement? Actually, it's pretty cool. It's not one of my favorites, but I do it myself and do occasionally program it for others. It really depends. I just find it quite an enjoyable movement to do, and that's quite a key factor when considering movement selection, is enjoying what you're doing. Ideally, you want a longer rope, because when you have a short, narrow rope like so, it does encourage you to stay a bit more hunched over and crunched. When the rope is a little bit longer, you can actually get the arms into a better position and take your lats to a slightly better range of motion. Sadly, we do not have access to a long rope here, and I don't want to be greedy by taking two ropes, which you can do by simply doing this. Second rope locked in, now you've made a long rope. This is also very applicable to triceps, which we'll get to in a few weeks. Probably rank this movement as between A and B. It could be either one. I don't think there's any right or wrong here. I'm probably going to lean more towards B tier, just because I think there are better alternatives that take the lats through a similar range of motion and the same plane of motion. First movement on this pull down station, there's a couple, is the wide grip pull down. Quite frankly, one of my favorite lat movements. Honestly, if I could only choose one lat movement to do ever, it would probably be a wide grip pull down, to be honest with you. Very similar points as to the wide grip pull up, but the thing here that makes it far more accessible is the fact that you aren't going to be limited by your body weight when doing a wide grip pull down. Oftentimes the pull up might be quite hard for me because shifting your body weight in any capacity is quite difficult. Pull down will help eliminate that problem by giving you access to a cable stack that goes very light or very heavy. The exact same rules apply here. Because you're taking the elbow closer to the body in the frontal plane here, it's going to heavily recruit the lats, specifically the lower lat fibers, which we really like. That being said, there's also great levels of stability here. You're not going to be hindered by stability or external weaknesses, which in turn makes it a really good movement. One of the things that's commonly overlooked when looking at effectiveness of movement is how stable are you. Very common external weakness for a lot of movements will be stability. This eliminates that entirely, which we like. But there's a but here. This is one of the movements in which I'd say range of motion is a bit trickier. Ideally, what you want to do is shorten the muscle as effectively as possible. And that will essentially mean getting the bar as close to the chest as possible. Not everybody has a range of motion to do so. I can't do that. I cannot get the bar to my chest. I don't have the mobility to do so, so it's not going to happen. So I almost create a bit of a green zone of range of motion here. Aim for anywhere from eyes down to chest is that green zone. This is, as long as you're clearing the eyes, you're probably good. This may mean your range of motion may drop off as you fatigue. You may be able to hit your chest, but over the reps, you start losing range of motion, range of motion, range of motion. I then stop at the point at which you can no longer reach your eyes. As long as you're in the green zone, you're fine. People will complain, oh, but you're not standardizing technique because you cannot complete all reps to the same standard. I get it, but I think it's Jeff Nippard made an argument about this with hamstring curls a few months ago, about how still going through some range of motion at the end, even if it's not the full range of motion, because the drop-off is so aggressive, is still going to provide some really good stimulus for growth. I kind of align with that when it comes to hamstring curl variations and pull-down variations, hence why with a hamstring curl variation, I try and get a green zone with a lat pull down variation, I do the same thing, get a green zone, just because I do not want to cut myself too shy or too short, just because I'm struggling to get into that fully shortened position. I think you already know the answer to this one, but it's going to be an S tier movement in my opinion. Another variation of pull down which people often do is a neutral grip pull down. Not quite with the bar used earlier, but a similar bar. And that's one where you're essentially taking it from a frontal plane movement to a sagittal plane movement, elbows in front of you, upper arms in front of you. That's cool. Do I like it? Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think it's another incredible movement. Because you aren't shifting yourself into an aggressively supinated position, it's much easier on the biceps, so less bicep recruitment. It's also much easier on the body because you can actually get into that position quite comfortably. We like that. The issue that arises with this is an argument for more elbow flexion due to this positioning, but you can alter that by leaning back slightly, etc., etc. The big thing I want to raise here is the handle being used. Many people love using these handles. There's a brand I think called Mag Grips. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's the coolest handle in the world for back gains. It's not. I'm going to tell you why. How can you utilize straps with these handles? You can't. Therefore, if you cannot strap up and eliminate grip as an external weakness, it's going to hold you back. Therefore, I avoid these handles as much as I can. Although they may feel nice, I'm not going to be limited by my grip here. But back to the point at hand being the neutral grip pull down, fantastic movement. Honestly, incredible. I love it. It's brilliant. You have to also consider exercise redundancy here. You don't want to do too many movements in the same plane of motion. If you're doing like a pullover and a neutral grip pull down and a one arm dumbbell row, they're all doing a very similar thing through a very similar range of motion. Therefore, exercise redundancy could be a thing that I spoke about in the previous video. Regardless, as a standalone, a neutral grip pull down is probably an A tier movement in my opinion. Although quite not as spicy as a wide grip due to personal preference, it's still bloody good. Another movement on the list is what was commonly referred to as an iliac pull down, because back in the day it was commonly believed that this would target more of the lower lat fibers, being the iliac fibers. This has since kind of been debunked and that people actually say it's more upper lat fiber, but we call it iliac pull down anyway, just because that's what I grew up knowing it was named as, even though it's not true. It's typically a high to low pull down in sagittal plane. Doesn't matter. Good movement, honestly, really good movement. Commonly, I see people do that on a cable machine, as you're probably seeing on screen at some point, which is fantastic. I like that a lot. Key there is use a bench. When you don't have the bench and are free flowing on the floor, you are going to be limited by stability. I don't know about you, but when I'm doing that, my body weight is going to go flying because I'm lifting quite a lot of weight. That's probably going to happen at some point. Do not create an external weakness or limiter that doesn't need to be there. Again, a really good sagittal plane movement, and one that again takes your lats from a really good leverage point, being 120 degrees, all the way down. One thing you'll see people do is they'll lean forward with it like so. Why? That basically turns it into a neutral grip pull down. We're trying to change the movement slightly, so leaning forward kind of defeats the purpose of doing this pull down variation. There's a lot more elbow flexion involved as well when you're more leant forward, so more elbow bending, which means more bicep recruitment, which also means greater likelihood for your biceps to hold you back. What we want to do in that case is lean slightly back, thus limiting how much the elbows are bending at peak contraction, being when the upper arm is in line with the body. You can also lean slightly into the working side, as the lats do assist somewhat with lateral spinal flexion here, so we want that. If you don't have access to a cable machine and do have access to something like this, which is a plate-loaded high row, you can do the iliac pull down here. I mentioned this in a video before, but I'm going to show you again. The issue with this is you have to slide yourself somewhat quite out of the machine, just because if I'm in the machine like so, it's encouraging my elbow to go away from the body. We don't want that. We want the elbow and upper arm to be close to the body, so I have to slide away. So I'm hanging my bum cheek off the seat and lean into this side a bit more, just keep my upper arm a bit closer to the body, like so. Do I like this variation? Yeah, I think it's okay. I much prefer the cable machine. Lines up with the body a bit better, which we like. But this one is fine if you don't have access to a cable machine, as we don't, because it's bloody busy. Because this movement takes the lats to a great range of motion, is very accessible for a lot of people, and also very stable. I'd actually rank this as another S tier movement. S for slippery sausage, which is what my mum used to call me when I was a child every time I misbehaved. The V-bar, low row, whatever you want to call it, the narrow neutral grip, honestly, chuck it in the bin. The reason why is I mentioned so many times throughout this video that you essentially want to keep the upper arm as close to the body as possible. We like that's what the lats are trying to do. I've never met anyone who is as wide as a V-bar, or as narrow as a V-bar, I should say. The grip is there. For me to keep the upper arm as close to my body, I'd have to be this narrow. I'm not, I don't think you are either. It's just a bit pants. It doesn't fit anyone's frame very well. Sure, if you don't have any other bars or attachments, I should say, it will suffice, I'm sure. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't fit the frame very well, and that's quite a big thing. What we ideally want is that neutral grip, but slightly wider variant, similar to the one you would probably utilize on a neutral grip pull down, which again, fits people's frames much better, because people are probably going to be about this wide, not this wide. It's hard because the movement with said attachment is probably going to be a C tier movement, to be honest. That movement, but again with a wider attachment, literally just by a few inches, that actually fits your frame much better, is going to shift that movement from being C tier very quickly to an A tier movement, in my opinion. So it really depends. For a simple change of handle can really drastically change how good that movement is, in my opinion, and also drastically change the stimulus in which your lats will experience for growth. Referring to the narrow grip handle alone, we're going to call that a C tier movement. C for clavicle, maybe. The single arm kneeling rows. It basically takes what the narrow grip row is trying to achieve and removes two limiters, being the grip width, being shocking, and also the lower back. When you are in a low row position, I do find my lower back does fatigue a little bit, but that's me. I've had some lower back issues. It's probably me projecting my insecurities onto you, and I do apologize. But also because the single arm, being the D handle, you can alter it to align with your body and really focus on keeping that upper arm close to the body, which is what we're trying to achieve here. When you're kneeling and stabilizing with the resting arm, it then in turn provides an additional level of stability, which we do really like. It allows you to alter and adjust and customize the movement to actually better align with your body and what you're trying to achieve, be that forward lean, backward lean, left, right, whatever it may be. You have much more freedom to kind of play with. Again, you remove your potential weakness, which is fantastic, and because you are holding on with that resting arm, you're providing another level of stability, and we really like stable movements. We may not be stable ourselves mentally, but we do like to be physically stable when optimizing hypertrophy. Remember that, put that on a t-shirt. I would probably opt it as an S tier movement. S for scrumptious, because it's going to give you scrumptious lats, which is something we all want. And the next movement is going to be featured in the second part of this video, which is going to be coming out in a couple of weeks. And that is the end of part one. And again, I will repeat before I get angry comments, just because I didn't include the movement doesn't mean I don't like it, or doesn't mean I don't do it. It just simply didn't make the cut, and we try and isolate it to about anywhere from about 10 to 15 movements per video, so you're not sat here for 25 minutes, because I don't think anybody would watch that. And if you would watch that, I actually really appreciate you. That means a lot. Thank you for tolerating me so much. If you aren't sure about whether I like or dislike a movement that hasn't been covered, simply drop it in the comment section below and I can give you my opinion there. But until the next one, thank you for tolerating me, and thank you for tolerating the video. Please like, share, comment, subscribe.